You know what's funny? We've been told for years that buying an electric car makes you a hero, saving the planet one silent mile at a time. But what if I told you that the whole electric vehicle revolution has almost nothing to do with saving Earth and everything to do with the biggest power grab in modern history? Stick around, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see every Tesla, every Rivian, every EV rolling down your street. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why governments and corporations are fighting a war that has your wallet caught right in the middle. If this gets your attention, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because we're diving deep into truths the mainstream won't touch. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. So let's rewind the clock for a second. Picture this. It's 1900 and the streets of New York City are filled with electric cars, not gas guzzlers. Yeah, you heard that right. Electric vehicles actually dominated American roads before Henry Ford changed everything with his Model T. Back then, EVs were cleaner, quieter, and frankly more sophisticated than their gasoline competitors. But here's where it gets interesting. Oil was cheap, really cheap, and the infrastructure for gasoline exploded across America like wildfire. Big oil companies saw an opportunity and seized it with both hands, building an empire so powerful that it would control global politics for the next century. Fast forward to today, and you'd think we've come full circle, right? Electric cars everywhere, charging stations popping up, everyone talking about zero emissions. But hold on, because the story you've been sold is missing some critical chapters. The push for electric vehicles isn't primarily about carbon footprints or melting ice caps. It's about control, specifically control over three things: energy resources, manufacturing dominance, and your freedom of choice. Let's start with energy. When you drive a gas car, you're dependent on oil, and we all know who controls oil. Middle Eastern nations, Russia, American energy giants, they've had us by the throat for decades. Every time there's conflict in the Gulf, gas prices spike, and we all feel it at the pump. But here's the twist nobody talks about. Electric cars don't free you from this control. They just shift who's holding the leash. Instead of oil barons, now you're dependent on whoever controls the electrical grid and the raw materials for batteries. And guess what? China controls over 70% of the world's rare earth mineral processing. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, all the stuff that makes your EV battery work. China's got the monopoly. So we've essentially traded one form of energy dependence for another, except this time the geopolitical chess pieces have moved to Beijing. Think about that for a second. The same politicians telling you to buy electric for the environment are the ones who've allowed American manufacturing to crumble while China built the infrastructure to dominate the EV supply chain. Coincidence? I don't think so. But wait, it gets even more twisted. Let's talk about the money, because that's where the real story lives. Governments around the world are throwing billions, literally billions of taxpayer dollars at EV subsidies. In America alone, you can get up to $7,500 knocked off an electric car purchase. Sounds great, right? Free money to go green? But here's what they're not telling you. Those subsidies aren't going to everyday Americans. They're going to wealthy buyers who can already afford expensive vehicles, and to the massive corporations manufacturing them. It's wealth transfer disguised as environmental policy. Meanwhile, working-class families who can't afford a $40,000 EV are stuck paying higher taxes to fund these programs, while gas prices keep climbing because of policies designed to make fossil fuels less attractive. You see the game now? They're making traditional cars more expensive through regulations and taxes, while making electric cars seem more affordable through subsidies you're paying for. It's financial engineering, not environmental protection. And here's a question that should make you uncomfortable. What happens when gas cars are phased out completely and everyone's forced onto the electrical grid? Who controls your ability to drive then? Not you, that's for sure. Imagine a world where your car's range, your access to charging, even your ability to travel freely is controlled by whoever manages the power supply. Rolling blackouts in California already show us how fragile the grid is, and we're supposed to add millions of EVs to that system? Something doesn't add up. Now let's throw in some history that'll blow your mind. Remember when diesel was supposed to be the clean fuel of the future? Yeah, that was a thing. In the early 2000s, European governments pushed diesel hard, offering tax breaks and incentives because diesel engines were more fuel efficient and produced less carbon dioxide than gasoline. Car manufacturers like Volkswagen jumped on board, and diesel cars flooded the market. Then what happened? the diesel emissions scandal. Turns out those clean diesel engines were pumping out nitrogen oxides at levels way beyond legal limits, and manufacturers had been cheating emissions tests for years. The same governments that promoted diesel suddenly demonized it, and millions of people who bought diesel cars thinking they were doing the right thing got burned. Now, here's the uncomfortable parallel. We're seeing the exact same pattern with electric vehicles. Governments pushing them hard, manufacturers racing to produce them, subsidies flowing like water. But are we asking the right questions about long-term consequences? What happens to all those lithium batteries when they die? Right now, there's no large-scale recycling infrastructure. Those batteries end up in landfills, leaching toxic chemicals into soil and groundwater. And mining for lithium and cobalt? It's an environmental nightmare. Communities in Congo, Chile, Argentina, they're seeing their water supplies destroyed, their land torn apart, all so we can feel good about driving silent cars in America. The dirty secret is that EVs just shift pollution from your tailpipe to someone else's backyard, usually in a developing country with weak environmental regulations. But you won't see that in the commercials showing happy families driving through pristine forests in their new electric SUV. Here's where the political power war really heats up. Major automakers have invested hundreds of billions of dollars into EV development, and they can't afford for this transition to fail. Ford, GM, Stellantis, they've bet their entire futures on electric, which means they need government mandates to force the market in that direction. Because here's the truth the industry knows but won't say out loud. Most consumers, when given a real choice without government interference, still prefer gas cars for their range, convenience, and lower upfront cost. So what do you do when the market won't naturally support your business model? You lobby governments to mandate it. California's already banned new gas car sales starting in 2035, and other states are following. It's not consumer demand driving this, it's corporate and political collusion. And let's not forget the surveillance aspect, because this is where it gets really creepy. Electric vehicles are essentially computers on wheels, connected to the internet, constantly collecting data about where you go, how you drive, even when you charge. That data is incredibly valuable and potentially dangerous in the wrong hands. Your gas car can't be remotely disabled or tracked nearly as easily as your EV can. Think about the implications. In a world where social credit scores or government overreach expand, your ability to travel could be restricted with the flip of a switch. Sound like dystopian fiction? China's already doing it with their vehicle tracking systems. So here's what's actually happening, the big picture that connects all these dots. The electric vehicle push is a massive restructuring of global economic and political power. It's about controlling energy markets, controlling manufacturing, controlling consumer behavior, and ultimately controlling freedom of movement. The environmental angle? That's just the marketing strategy, the emotional appeal that gets people to support policies they'd otherwise question. Because who wants to be against saving the planet, right? But when you follow the money, trace the political connections, and look at who actually benefits from this transition, the picture becomes crystal clear. This isn't about your carbon footprint, it's about their power expansion. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying electric cars are evil or that innovation is bad. Technology advancing is generally positive, and if someone wants to buy an EV with their own money, more power to them. The problem is the coercion, the subsidies funded by taxpayers, the mandates eliminating choice, the propaganda pretending this is purely environmental when it's fundamentally political and economic. Here's what you need to understand as we head toward the finish line. The next decade will determine whether we transition to EVs through genuine market innovation and consumer choice, or through government force and corporate manipulation. The powers pushing this transition are counting on you not asking questions, not connecting the dots, just nodding along because saving the environment sounds nice. But you're smarter than that, which is why you're still watching. The real environmental solutions might look completely different from what we're being sold. Hydrogen fuel cells, synthetic fuels, dramatically improved efficiency in traditional engines, even better public transportation infrastructure. But those options don't centralize control the way universal EV adoption does, which is exactly why they're not getting the same political and financial backing. So what can you do? Stay informed. Question narratives, especially when billions of dollars and massive political power are behind them. Support actual consumer choice rather than government mandates. Demand transparency about the true environmental costs of EVs, including mining and battery disposal. And most importantly, recognize when you're being played in someone else's power game. The war over electric vehicles isn't about saving polar bears, it's about who controls the future of energy, manufacturing, and personal freedom. Now you know what's really at stake every time you see another EV commercial or hear another politician promise a green future. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep pulling back the curtain on stories the mainstream won't touch. And drop a comment below telling me what you think. Am I onto something here, or am I missing a piece of the puzzle? Until next time, keep questioning everything. And remember, the truth is always more complicated and more interesting than what they're selling you.